Before I knew it, I heard a loud bang, and I'd lost pulse in my leg. And so the doctor came over to me and said, "Andre, you're in a critical condition right now. You're still in a critical condition. And so if your leg doesn't react in a quick time, then we're going to have to chop your leg off." I didn't always make the right decisions. One particular night, everything changed for me in a split second. And I remember it distinctively because it was just before Mother's Day. And so I went out with some friends and went into a bar and was just having a few drinks. And later, towards the end of the night, I'd looked over and my neighbour was in the middle of an all-in brawl. So there was about 10 or 15 guys around him, punching, kicking, elbows, bottles. And my immediate thought was, if I don't jump in, then, his life is at risk. And so without hesitation, I kind of leapt over the fence and ran straight in to pull him out. But unfortunately, I guess the attention was drawn to me and everybody turned to me, and I started getting the kicks and the punches. And so the security guards kind of formed a quick barrier around the area and pushed us outside and closed the doors. And so by that moment, so I'm not used to any of that. As I was saying, I grew up in a devout Maronite Catholic home, and we were taught, Mum and Dad always taught me to be respectful and never to get involved in any of that. So that was all new to me. And so it was a shock to my system to be in that situation. And so immediately I kind of collected my thoughts and I just started yelling out, "Let's go home. We don't need to be here. Let's just go home. Let's get out of here. We don't need to be here." And before I knew it, I heard a loud bang. And I didn't know what that was. It sounded like firecracker. And then I heard a second bang. But this time I realized what it was, and it was a gunshot and a bullet. I just got shot behind my left knee in my nerve, vein and artery. And so that immediately I lost feeling in my leg and dropped straight down. And so a quick thinking friend of mine took off his shirt, at least slowed down the bleeding. At that moment, I was kind of looking around. I was still in a little bit of shock, not understanding exactly what was going on. And I was looking around for my brother and for my neighbours. And again, before I knew it, I was thrown into the back of a car and rushed to hospital, which thank God was only 2 minutes away from where the incident had occurred. And so on my way to the hospital, again, I kind of didn't know what was going on. I arrived to the hospital and they transferred me from the car into the emergency room. And so at that moment, I realized that, potentially I would lose my life tonight because I was losing a lot of blood. And, and just by the reaction of the doctors and the nurses in the room, something wasn't right. And so, because I understood that was happening, immediately I started thinking of Our Lady, of our Heavenly Mother, and she was with me at that moment. And I felt her spouse, the Holy Spirit, descend upon me at that moment. And before I knew it, I was praying the Hail Mary out loud in this moment. Because growing up, as I said earlier, growing up in a Maronite Catholic home, all we knew was prayer, all we knew was welcoming people, was being generous and showing Christ-like manners. And so when I was in this moment, I remember praying the words, pray for me now and at the hour of our death. And I literally thought this was my moment of death. And And so again, so the Holy Spirit descended on me, and I felt this power, and I just started praying the Hail Mary loud. And at that moment, I knew Our Lady had me, and she was holding my hand, and I knew I would be fine. And so all that fear that I had, by looking at the emergency room and all the doctors around me and everything that was happening around me, I immediately got some peace, and I knew she was there. She was there for me. She would save me. And the next thing I remember was waking up and hearing my mother Mary trying to get access to me into the hospital room, and the doctor was kind of saying, no, you can't see him, and she was just arguing. She wanted to see. And I always think of that moment because it was Mother's Day. And, my mother was at home, and she didn't like when we went out, but I guess we're just growing up and just doing that thing. And so she received that knock on the door. My father and my mother just waking up in the middle of the night, and somebody telling them that your son's been shot. And, they just got out of there and ran straight to the hospital. So all that was happening around me. And so at that moment, when I opened my eyes post-surgery and listening to my mother trying to get access to me, it kind of reminded me of Our Lady and how she wanted to get access to Jesus when he was carrying his cross. And I'd lost pulse in my leg. And so the doctor came over to me and said, Andre, you're in a critical condition right now. You're still in a critical condition. And so these are the next steps we have to take. And so if your leg doesn't react in a quick time, then we're going to have to chop your leg off. And so obviously that was a shock to me. Again, as I was saying earlier, I love sport, love playing sport, and my life just changed in a split second. And so my mother went into prayer mode as she did, and she was praying to Our Lady. I continued to pray to Our Lady as well. So we were both praying, my entire family. I felt everybody praying to Our Lady, because they know that I've got that connection with our mother. And so these prayers and it just rose into heaven, and Our Lady heard that, and she reacted. And so thankfully, after 5 days, the pulse returned to my leg, and I managed to save my leg. But unfortunately, I lost all feeling in my leg, and I've basically got a dead leg or a dead foot, so I can't move my toes or my ankle. But praise be to God, I'm so happy that I have that. And, I think of Saint Maximilian Kolbe and his love for Mary. When he was presented with a white crown and a red crown, and were asked which one he wanted to choose, and he chose both. I guess for me, I chose that I wanted to keep this painful reminder. I wanted to keep this painful reminder of my leg being in this situation, because, Our Lady of Fatima, she told the three kids, the three shepherd children, that many souls go to hell, and we need to make sacrifices for them. And so to make a sacrifice, you have to make atonement for a sin, and so sin needs to exist. And so sometimes I feel like in the world that we live in today, no one's calling it out. No one's calling sin a sin. And so I use this pain that Mary gave me, or that Mary's supporting me with. I don't think Mary gave me this pain. A mother never gives her children pain, but she gave me the strength to want to have this pain in reparation for the sins and for the outrages in which myself was part of. I was part of that. And so it's just a small gesture that I could offer up to Our Lady in honor of her son, that I would walk on my leg and not change a thing, and just go through this pain in my life.